Hello everyone, this is the Pedagogical Document Film Festival. We are Group 7, Manla Tamang, Srishti Talami, Liberty and Caitlin. So what is pedagogical documentation? Pedagogical documentation is the process of making learning visible, which is open to interpretation and critique. It is the continuous process that encourages others to reflect on the discussion materials in a critical and democratic ways. Pedagogical documentation invites inquiry about the children's thinking and invites predictions about effective teaching. Meanwhile, display invites pleasure and satisfaction, but it is not deliberately designed to provoke hypotheses. So, why pedagogical documentation is useful? Pedagogical documentation is an important tool that helps the educator to better understand the understanding and learning processes of the children inside the classroom. Educators learn by observing, play, and find educational ways to teach the children through interactions as the play. Through the use of pedagogical documentation, the educator looks at learning in a variety of different ways based on each individual children and can come up with an curriculum plan for each children to help them learn. So the educator collects the data in pedagogical documentation to examine the children's learning and how the educator responds to this learning. After the data being analyzed, the educator will decide how they will support the children in the learning. The educator uses the evidence or data in pedagogical documentation to plan future learning opportunities for their students that will enhance the overall understanding and knowledge of the children. The educator uses the pedagogical documentation as an ongoing cycle in order for the child's growth and improvement of the kindergarten classroom. What makes documentation pedagogical? The documentation will become pedagogical when it is interpreted and analyzed by the educator, the children who create the content, and the viewer when it influences future teaching and learning processes. When documentation is put into action in the classroom and often insight into complex learning. What educators can do to make documentation pedagogical? So educators can observe children activities and they can analyze by why, how, and what they are doing. Interpretation, like educators can view and observe and analyze and interpret by what does it mean, how can educators further support their learning skills. What educators can do to make documentation pedagogical? So we can take pictures, records, video, children's work or art, and handwritten notes. When we study these all materials, then this process of studying or analyzing the documentation makes it pedagogical. Evidence of learning and analyzing and interpreting by the educators is collaboration with the children and their parents or other family members to gain insights into the children's learning paths and processes. The insights gains are the basic of determining next step in the children's learning. So how can we create high quality, meaningful and useful pedagogical documentation? In order to create high quality, meaningful and useful pedagogical documentation, first of all we should observe and analyze children's learning, which makes children's learning and thinking visible. We can also include good quality pictures, audio, videos and notes in the documentation. This provides enough information about the subjects, and also we can give backgrounds and ongoing activities details, which helps to deliver meaningful conversation. So the examples of low quality documentation is that we take from the Bongo design session. In this documentation we can see the picture of Dreamcatcher, and to make this documentation we have materials, we have used feathers, plastic late markers and threads. So the strength of low quality documentation are pictures of the activities, the materials, we can see them clearly, and the weaknesses are like there is no detail on how to make the things. We cannot see the pictures like who are engaging in the activities. There is no conversational information. There is also no description on what we can learn from it, like the medium quality of documentation is the example that we took from the lesson 8 documentation example 2, walk to the crop trails. This is the picture from video where children and adults walk into the crop trails from investigating and exploring the environments and animals. We believe this document is the good quality documentation because it provides the meaningful and useful information. So good quality documentation is strength are it is good in conversation information, description on what they are doing, children's learn and thinking are visual, adults is asking meaningful questions to children's. The weaknesses are more voice from adults, and we can say like only girls are engaging in the learning. So what is high quality documentation? High quality documentation are those documentation which makes learning visible and clear to children, colleagues and educator based on learning, play or inquiry. So according to Jessica Phillips, when we document children's learning, it becomes easier to track and respond to the child's thinking, understanding, strength, needs, and interest. Inquiry makes it really meaningful. It is the adult's intention because when they are creating data, then they are doing so with an idea about what it is they are studying. Then is that helps the documentation to have meaning. Authentic inquiry begin with questions and problems that students want to find out more about. So high quality documentation, we took the example of scavenger hunt. This is the high quality documentation where we are able to see children engaging in a scavenger hunt. Their children are collecting data by observing and exploring the environment around them. We can see children's mind exercising by reinforcing problem solving skills. We can also see what the children's interests and abilities by doing these activities. Strengths are it has a clear mission and vision for exploring the environment based on play experience, has output of exploring or play, reinforce problem solving skills, contains evidence of learning by adding pictures of children's activities, response to open-ended questions. So in the conclusion, pedagogical documentation is the process of observing and documenting inspection on children's learning, focus on education, use of pedagogical documentation, making learning visible, examining and responding on children's learning, planning for the future learning activities, high quality, meaningful and useful documentation which provides enough